while there is no right way to parent your children, there are things you can be doing wrong. And experts say that your parenting style can really have an impact on the development and growth of your family structure.
Joining us to break it all down is licensed child psychologist Dr. Nicole Berkins. Good morning, doctor, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
For sure. So, doctor, can you talk to us a little about this concept of even having parenting styles? Where did it originate from?
Yeah, absolutely. Parenting styles was something that a psychologist came up with back in the 60s, really looking at the different styles of interaction and engagement that parents have with their kids. And really, when we're thinking about parenting style, we're thinking about a combination of two main things. The first is the kind of expectations or demands and limits that we place on our children. And then the second is the degree of warmth or caring or empathy that we exhibit toward them. And so it's sort of where we fall in each of those dimensions that determines our parenting style.
So there are 4 parenting styles that we want to talk about this morning, right? So I was trying to figure out where exactly my parents were on this list. Let's begin with authoritative.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 4 main parenting styles that the research has come up with. The first is authoritarian style. This is sort of a my way or the highway approach. These types of parents place a lot of demands and high expectations on their child, but at the same time aren't very warm or supportive towards their kids in meeting those expectations. So that's authoritarian. The second is the permissive style. This can be thought of as sort of a best friend style of parenting. These parents are very warm and connected and engaging with their kids, but aren't so great at setting limits, boundaries, or creating structure for their children. The third type is the uninvolved parent. These are the you're on your own type of parents. These parents don't set boundaries for their kids and really don't have expectations for them, and also are pretty disengaged. They're not very supportive or warm or caring towards their kids. And then the fourth style, which is really where we should be aiming to land, is the authoritative style. This can be thought of as parents who create loving boundaries for their kids. These parents have high expectations and demands on their kids and are good at setting boundaries and following through on enforcing limits.
Wait, what was the first one?
They're very warm and engaging with their kids and provide a lot of support for their children to meet those expectations. And that authoritative style is really what the research shows leads to the best outcomes for kids.
Interesting. So, Dr. Berkins, what is the difference between the first and the fourth? The first was authoritative. The fourth was authoritarian disciplinarian. Could you differentiate the two of those for us?
Yeah, so it's hard because they sound the same, right? So that first one, that authoritarian style, these are parents who say, this is the way it needs to be. Don't ask questions. I don't owe you any explanations. And there is a good piece of that of they do hold their kids to high expectations and they do place appropriate demands on them, but the warmth and sort of the collaboration with their kids is missing. Authoritative parents, those parents also have high expectations. They set limits and boundaries on their kids, but they bring that warmth and that support into it. So it could look like, having to set a boundary with a child and saying, you do need to sit down and do your homework. But also, I understand that you're feeling frustrated about that. Let's talk about how you're feeling. Let's see if we can come to a compromise. That would be an example of a more authoritative way of handling that, as opposed to just authoritarian. Sit down and do your homework and don't ask me, don't complain about it or ask me about it.
Right. So it seems like with these parenting styles, it's cyclical, right? So if you look at the trend, my grandparent probably has a similar parenting style as my mother, and I'll probably inherit a lot of my mother's parenting styles. So where do you think these cultural norms and your own childhood experience, where do you think they all fit and marry as we develop our own unique parenting styles?
Yeah, that's a great question, because really what we know is that the parenting style that we were raised with tends to be what we bring into our own parenting. And so awareness is important, right? If we had a parent who maybe was very permissive or very uninvolved, and we recognize some of those things coming through in our own parenting, that's an opportunity for us to really look at that and say, what pieces do I feel like worked well? in how my parent raised me, and what things do I want to change as a parent myself.
Yeah.
And so that awareness can really help guide us into taking the pieces that we feel like from our own childhood were effective and helpful and that we want to bring to our parenting, but also making changes that we feel like will benefit our kids even more.
You know, it's so interesting because when you're a kid, looking back at being a kid, you think your parents are doing everything wrong. You're like, why are you doing this to me? And then you're like, actually, that was the right way to do it when you grow up. And then you're on the flip side of it. You're like, well, they really were right all along. Doctor, thank you so much for being here this morning. I appreciate all your advice.
Thank you so much.